My fellow veterans, our friends at Trident Coffee, our friends at Veterans in Entertainment, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of ViacomCBS and the ViacomCBS Veterans Network, welcome to our Capstone Veterans Month Coffee with Vets. How fortunate we are to be here celebrating three things this evening that are absolutely near and dear to everyone's heart: the entertainment industry, our nation's brave military and veteran community, and coffee. It does not get any better than this. And I'll say, especially for those who know military coffee, you can use it as paint and shellac. But more on that later, how great Trident coffee is. Events like this would not take place without a tremendous amount of work. And I just want to thank my dear friends and colleagues at the ViacomCBS Veterans Network, all of our colleagues at ViacomCBS, and our amazing, amazing partners. So thank you. And the Veterans in Entertainment and Trident Coffee, thank you for your passion, for your dedication, and for being a force of good in an otherwise dark universe. To our active duty military personnel, our veteran guests, thank you very much for your sacrifice, your steadfast leadership, your unwavering commitment, and your distinguished service to our great country, and for all that you've done for our nation. You motivate and inspire us. You're the reason we do what we do. And it is an honor and a privilege to be with you tonight. Through your years of dedication and sacrifice, you remind us all of what the highest expression of citizenship is, which is military service and service to our military veterans. Thank you. Today, we are very proud of the nearly 600 veterans that are currently employed at ViacomCBS, and we never forget our obligation to the more than 22 million living veterans in the United States, especially to the 2.6 million veterans who nobly answered the call after the tragic events of September 11th of 2001. They and their families for the last 19 years has faced significant challenges in service to our nation. The ViacomCBS Veterans Network is proud to continue the great legacy of those who have come before us in ways big and small to do what this company has always done, which is to make an unwavering commitment to assist our nation's veterans and their families. You'll always hear us say, what can we do to help? 19 days ago, we celebrated Veterans Day and honored the men and women who have worn the nation's uniform. More importantly, we joined together to thank them for their service and devotion to duty. Whether they served in a time of war or peace, our veterans all share a common bond, that unwavering belief in a cause of freedom, a belief so strong that they were willing to sacrifice so much in its defense. You know that you can count on ViacomCBS to deliver the best content on TV and on the big screen, and to stand shoulder to shoulder with you to make sure that we honor our nation's military, its veterans, and their families, as we honor President Lincoln's call to action from his second inaugural address, to care for them that shall have borne the battle. We are so fortunate tonight to be joined by two men that I consider to be dear friends, and I'm honored and privileged to call dear friends, and a friend to all of us, Mike Maas and Joel Carpenter. Mike Maas, the executive producer at CBS 2 Los Angeles, is with us tonight as our moderator. He is the recipient of numerous Emmys and Pro-Max awards. He has been the guiding creative force at CBS for the past 21 years. Next year, Mike will celebrate his 40th anniversary in the television and entertainment industry. Although not a veteran himself, but he's sure that you don't get any closer than that. Born to a military family, and speaking of military families, he comes from a family that has its roots in service to our nation going back over a century and possibly further. His grandfather, Albert Maas, enlisted in the United States Cavalry back in 1898 and rode with Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders. Mike's father, the retired Major Peter Maas, was a decorated combat pilot who flew numerous missions both in the Korean and Vietnam Wars. And he ended his career flying the famed Flying Fortress, the B-52, which is still in service to this day. Mike's brother, the retired Army Master Sergeant Peter Maas Jr., was deployed to Iraq during the first Gulf War during Operation Desert Storm, and was assigned to the Army's first, the Big Red One, the Armored Tank Division, and fought in the famous 4-day ground battle, engaging the retreating Republican Guard. And he served for 26 years, retiring from active duty about 7 years ago. We're so fortunate to have Mike. There's no one who is more passionate and cares more deeply about the military and veteran community. We are also so fortunate to have as our special guest a very dear friend, someone who exemplifies not only the creative spirit of this entertainment community, but also someone who is of the 2.6 million that honored their call to service after September 11th. And he'll speak more about this. But Joel also, having spent 5 years serving as an Army Ranger in special operations, having conducted several hundred special operations missions, both in Iraq and Afghanistan, he exemplifies that spirit like no other. Joel is a producer, a writer, and technical advisor to both film and television. He's known for The Amazing Race, Skid Boot, The Ridge. He's attended the Theatrical Institute, the Stella Adler Academy, studying under Irene Gilbert. He auditioned for the lead role in She's All That and Cruel Intentions too. And then I'll let him tell his story, but it is amazing. Having come from the Hollywood community, the creative community, and then that fateful day of September 11th changed so many lives, but also Joel's life. After his service in Iraq and Afghanistan, he served in multiple deployments with the Department of Defense in their protective security details, both for commercial, military, not-for-profit, and other government agencies on 5 continents and 60 countries. Let me just say this, the skill of both of these professionals, these amazing professionals, is only exceeded by their devotion and service to our nation's veterans. And we are so proud of all that they do and have done, and are so appreciative that they were able to join us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming both Mike and Joel.
Thank you, Rich, for that, and welcome everybody. This is our first virtual Coffee with Vets experience. You know, we're just going to have a little chat with Joel, get to know him a little bit better, some of the secrets that he's discovered along the way, and he'll be ready to share some of his stories with us. So speaking of, our first Hollywood movie is going to be Joel. Joel, you know, we're all anxious to kind of get to know you and get to know some of your, you know, your stories and your secrets, you know, the ins and outs of your experience and what the military kind of meant to you, and that kind of the desire to serve.
Definitely. So jumping right into it, going back to my childhood, as Rich mentioned, military brat. Yeah, my father served in the Air Force. So I came from a generation of different people who served. And so growing up in that, it was just the way life was. I was in love with, you know, war films and all this kind of stuff in the Army. And I think at a young age, I thought, okay, when I get older, I want to do one of 2 things. And one of those 2 things was either I wanted to join the military and be a special operations soldier or become a pilot. And the other one was I was just so interested, even at a young age, with film and understood the concept of acting. And so I wanted to get involved in that on a creative side.
And so obviously the Army Rangers was the choice. What was the deciding factor for that?
Well, there was a couple of things that I really was interested in. Number one, my dad had always told me, hey, if you're going to join the military, become an officer. And so initially when I went into the recruiters, I was saying, okay, I wanted direct action. I wanted to immediately be like on the ground involved in everything. And so not knowing really what the process was about, I walked into, like I said, the different recruiters at different branches. And I just said, I want to be an officer. I want a 2-year contract. And I also want to be involved in like direct action. I want to be the guy going in to get all these things. And my terms just didn't exist in an MOS. It wasn't a reality. They were probably laughing at what I requested. And so they kind of helped me to, you know, aim small, miss small.
Was there any point in that, you know, in that initial time period where you were like, what the hell did I just do? or were you?
Yeah, the whole time.
Hey, Joel, you know, I know in, you know, many of the amazing people that you had the privilege to serve with, many of them names that are known only to a small group, but you had the privilege to serve with someone of note, who was one of your best friends, who you went through Ranger School with, and that was Pat Tillman. You know, and I know that you know, you had filled in a lot of blanks. I think that was, you know, his, you know, I think there was a lot of similarity between what your choice and his choice, right? He gave up a football career. You gave up, you know, a career in Hollywood, and, you know, both being sort of a non-traditional enlistee with a life experience. Maybe share with everyone, you know, that friendship, you know, a little bit about, you know, what you guys went through. And then, you know, I know it touched you in a way that you actually, there was some creative that you then had developed out of that, you know, after Pat's death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you obviously anybody who's ever served, or you know, just relationships in life matter, and I think you align with people who share similarities. There's a big difference between you know, Pat Tillman, who had actual $1 million contracts, and then me in Hollywood pursuing acting and screenwriting. That was very speculative, even though that there were, you know, talks with big companies and studios, and I had a spec script out. There were no guarantees. Pat was, yeah, he became a good friend and really great guy, super inspirational. You know, always thinking at a different level, philosopher, you know, the warrior. Just, you know, I was really privileged to meet him and to be able to become friends with him and his brother and all the other guys that I served with as well.
You know, that's a great story, and a great, you know, those are great relationships that are formed, and I'm sure that that's the thing that you miss most about it. And so, Joel, take us to a you know, a situation, or maybe just a you know, the main thing that kind of helped you in terms of your military career. So transferring that over to the entertainment industry, what has been what is the main strength of your military background that's helped you?
I think the training and the deployments set a bar and a frame of reference. It really kind of framed like rejection for me, and like what I could take, I think, in the private sector. So coming up against, if you're pursuing something, you know, if it's not just a simple transaction, like you have a product, you're going to sell this product to somebody that they want that product, and there's a transaction that takes place like selling cheeseburgers or something. When you get into, you know, the industry, I think it's more like you have to prove that you have a product, you have to prove and build the relationships, and you have to, there's endless stories of some of the greatest movies of all time where people said that they'll never be a movie. So whether it was Star Wars, Back to the Future, whichever one it was, they all had hurdles, but they all started off with basically hundreds or thousands of people who thought it was the worst thing they'd ever come across. And so working beyond those stumbling blocks and challenges, and, you know, gatekeepers and whoever else to get past the no's to get to a yes, and then try to build that, you know, to accomplish your final plan.
Hey, Joel, if I could jump in, I think, you know, I mean, so many stories that we've, you know, in conversations that we've had. And I always say to you that if they're, you know, in the dictionary under drive on mentality, should be your picture, right? I mean, you know, that never quit, that fierce determination. And I think for this group, especially, who are, you know, creative, who are part of this entertainment community, I think one of the stories that was really amazing and just showed the passion you had, both as being a ranger, but also as someone who still had that creative spirit, even in the worst of circumstances. Just tell us about what, you obviously had pre-mission, procedure, but maybe just walk people through some of the additional things that weren't necessarily part of the TO&E or pre-combat drill stuff that I think people would appreciate.
Right. So I think what Rich is talking about, there's an incident where in 2005, I'm on an Afghanistan deployment, and a few years had passed, but a speculative screenplay that I had written was circulating Hollywood, and there were some some executives that had previously loved the project, but had moved on to different companies. And so I thought, okay, well, why not resuscitate this project? And so I was reaching out to them and opening a discussion and kind of rekindling that. And so we'd be going on the different missions, and there was one particular mission where we were set to go on. I was supposed to be first guy on the ground. We were going to fast rope out of Chinooks on this mountainside and cliff in Afghanistan, and it didn't look good. There was fighting positions in bed. It just was like, that worst case scenario. And so obviously taking care of everything else, the PCIs and everything, checking on my men. And one of the last things I did before I left our rabbit hutch was I sent an email to this executive in Hollywood, and I just said, "Hey, hope you're doing well." I mean, he had no clue that I was an Army Ranger or had left Hollywood. But I just said, here's the most updated version of the screenplay. Hope you like it. And then I pressed send, and then I left the note on my laptop that was open. I just said, if something happens to me, send this laptop to so-and-so, they'll know what to do with the information, the screenplay or whatever. And nothing ended up happening. The mission actually ended up getting what we referred to at the time, canceled or canked, we would call it. And so I came back and I removed the note and tore it up and threw it in the garbage can. But I mean, once again, the email was received but with no indication on the other side, what circumstances it had been sent from. And I joke with Rich about it, like maybe any sort of foreign surveillance, by NSA or other intelligence collection, they would have really been wondering what a screenplay to these Hollywood executives was being sent from, this forward operating base in Afghanistan, or maybe they didn't care at all. I don't know, but I always thought about it, thought it was funny.
Great story, Joel. And talking about going back to, prior to your military experience, you also entertained the acting area. And, and did you give up on that afterwards, or how has that changed?
Yeah, so acting was the big part. So when I first left, first of all, I had made that promise that I was going to leave when I was 18. That didn't happen. I attended college for like several years, and then I ended up dropping out, and I left when I was 20 and actually close to going on 21, and went out there, and immediately, upon arrival, within I think a few weeks, I had gotten my first part in like an MTV music video, which back in the day MTV was pretty big, and so it was inspiring. And then I was out and auditioning, and it's one thing, for people to audition for a lead role is a huge thing. People audition for roles, and I've auditioned for thousands of them, but yes, I did pursue acting. It was the main focus, and from acting, it actually transitioned into writing. So I'd met a friend of mine. We had both worked on Rodeo Drive and for our day jobs, and he was a writer. And then we got into this, and this thought for this spec screenplay came along, and so I shifted into. I was still doing acting, still doing auditions. Things were going well, getting callbacks, but I'd also added screenwriting, And then shortly after, through a network of people that I knew that had worked at Fox, and some other people worked at a company called Phoenix Films, which was run and owned by Mike Medavoy. I had written a treatment for the screenplay with a writing partner, a friend of mine. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like a couple people got a hold of it, and then it just really blew up. And so the walls that I'd been trying to breach for 6 years were immediately opened up through writing. And I was having meetings with presidents of companies, and, you know, going to the Fox building over there off of, I think, La Cienega. I can't remember all the names now, but anyways, having meetings on, you know, the 30-something floor, and it just felt different. There was nobody was holding me back. It was like, it was totally different from an audition.
So what advice would you have if anybody else was interested in the acting aspect? What advice would you have for them?
Well, I don't know how good my advice would be, since I didn't really, you know, end up becoming successful at it. But through my experiences, I think acting is, like I said, at the end of my time frame in Los Angeles, which was around 6 years, I truly believe that it's a matter of time, because you go through a cycle where when you first come out to LA, at least back then, you have this new energy. You smile, you're different. Like, people haven't seen you. Hollywood's a really small town, and so when you show up in the auditions, that energy comes across on the film, you know, for casting, and so people look at you differently, and they think, oh wow, I really like this guy's energy. They don't know where it comes from or anything. After you're there in Hollywood for a little bit, and this is the same as anywhere, you start to morph into the culture. You start to become part of the culture. And part of the Hollywood culture for struggling artists is some people begin to feel disenchanted. They begin to get a little bit jaded, and you can't quite figure it out. And so you lose confidence. You go into an audition, and you no longer are reacting based on instincts, and you kind of lost the confidence, and that comes across in the camera. And I think for me personally, I moved through those experiences, and then got to a point where I just didn't really, I was comfortable. I didn't really care anymore. And that's when the auditions, you know, really started, I think, happening, and the callbacks started happening more for me. Was I was just in a state of confidence, and was very calm when I went into the room, and I'd read my lines, and I was very interactive, and, you know, communicating with the casting directors and other people. So there was like the idea for, I think, the producer of the casting directors of like, yes or no, this person may be who we're looking for. But I don't know why, but I also like this individual, and I think that they would be, you know, interesting to work with for, you know, the next however many months. So if anything, a takeaway would just be, I think, to just stick through it, you know, move beyond if you start to feel like this isn't working out, or I'm on the wrong path. I think to just like in the military, they'd say, get out of the kill zone. I think that's a kill zone. You have to get to the other side.
Yeah, you know, and I think you nailed it too. It's always just kind of an unseen thing when you're casting, you know, or when you're meeting somebody, no matter what their job is. You know, it's that emotion that just comes through, and that confidence, you know, if it's there or if it's not there, you know, it definitely shows. And you know, and I don't know, you know, people have even asked me that question, how do you master X, Y, or Z? And it's like, I don't know that I've mastered anything. You know, I just keep doing it. And it's the process of doing it is what I love doing. You know, whether it's writing, directing, producing, it's the process of. So, you know, speak to that area just a little bit. What do you enjoy most about Hollywood? I know we all tend to, or the jobs themselves, we all tend to, you know, get a little bit jaded, you know, in certain respects at certain times. Well, so I guess it's a two-part question. What do you enjoy most, and how did you pull yourself out of those periods of self-doubt?
Mm-hmm. Without question, it's the creating for me. the creating part. So these days, feature film development or TV series or screenwriting, it's the creating of these worlds. I personally am drawn to things that are either inspired or based on true stories. So I look for stories that have the potential to maybe inspire the world. And I try to somehow get involved in those. Those things really, the idea of creating something that would potentially serve as a catalyst for someone to, change something radical in their lives for a positive, or inspire them to go out and to achieve greatness in whatever thing. If I could just be a small part of that, like that gets me inspired. I enjoy collaborating with other people that share like the same vision in regards to the creative and like you said, the pursuit of, the development of, because as you're developing all these things, you're putting them together, and it's like you're writing, you're trying to figure, it's like putting together the pieces of a puzzle. Once you've put the puzzle together, it's like, you're like, okay, that was awesome. I need another puzzle. And so, I think that's really what it is that drives me in that regard.
Okay, now, and then part two of that was, how do you overcome the, the self-doubt when you get those no's that we often get in, in this business. There's a lot of them. How do you overcome that? How did you overcome it?
Yeah. So part of it's probably innate in me, but then the other thing was one of the first jobs that I had when I was transitioning from military to the civilian sector is I jumped into mortgage origination. So I worked as a loan officer, and we had to make 50 to 100 calls. And so it was all about 50 to 100 calls a day. So it was all about connecting with someone on the phone. This is before a lot of social media, and basically earning their trust in a short period of time. I think that helped me in terms of like cold calling with someone and developing authentic rapport in a short period of time. I still receive, rejection. I've been rejected 1,000, probably, I don't even know, man, thousands of times. I've heard the word no. I've heard people say, the stories I'm working on will never be a movie. I've had particular directors just get mean about it and just feedback and just say that this story sucks. It's the worst thing I've ever heard of. And for me, I have the perspective of this is like, when I'm bringing a project or when I'm working on a project, this is literally how I think. It's not like a mind trick. It's nothing. I love the project so much. When I bring it and I present it, the person ultimately has the choice of whether they would want to, basically team up or become a partner on the project. But the reality is for me is that I'm bringing this to them as a favor. So like, you're not doing me a favor, like I'm doing you a favor. And so it's either yes or no. And if it's a no, that's a faster answer for me to basically push aside from you and to go get my yes. Like, I don't get caught up on the no, because at different times, yeah, you could get low and you could think, man, it's just been a no after a no after a no. But for me, I just think of it like, who wants to hire that guy? Who wants to work with that person who thinks your project sucks? Like, and I don't even want to convince him, honestly. No, please, it doesn't suck. Don't you just want to work with me? It's like, if he doesn't have the vision for it, if he doesn't have the shared vision, then that's the last person I want involved in the project.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely the truth. And almost every successful, I think, in fact, if I probably look back on it, every successful project, had that aspect of it where it's like, the people had that shared vision or that like-mindedness, and if they didn't, sometimes I would convince them. And so to that end, when you're creating something, it's your baby, it's personal to you, and all of that kind of comes into play. So that never actually hurt your feelings if somebody said, this is the worst thing I've ever read, or this is the worst story I've ever heard of. That's never actually hurt your feelings at all?
Well, no, I want to be clear. So I'm not saying that it doesn't affect me, but it's probably for a very short time, and I don't get wrapped
Oh,
around the axle about it. So,
great.
so, and sometimes it doesn't affect me, by the way. Lately, I'd say in the last 5 years, it doesn't, because I know that if you come to, 100 different people and ask them their opinion about a story, each one of them has a different feeling about it. And so that's just a reality. Some people will like it. Some people will love it. Some people will hate it.
Right.
And as soon as I came to that realization, I'm like, yeah, it's okay, because either way I get my answer. Like, you're not who I'm supposed to work with. So that's
Right.
okay.
And you don't take it as your identity. It doesn't attack your identity. So, and
Nah.
that's huge. That's one of those things that, I think you even mentioned it before. It's kind of an innate quality, it's already there. And you're right. You're never going to get 100% agreement. And nobody's ever going to be a fan, or not everybody is going to be a fan. They should be, but they aren't, and if they aren't, that's cool. They should want to be, right? So, what's your next thing? What's the thing you're looking most forward to right now?
There's two projects that I have right now that are really, really close. One of them I would say is the closest. It's a dog movie. Acquired the property a while ago, exclusive option to the property. So in regards to like my current pursuits, and this probably would be beneficial knowledge for the audiences, is how to gain intellectual property. I mean, Robert Evans, who you guys are kind of like intertwined with Paramount and the legacy there. He said that property's king, and without it, you're a peon. I didn't even see, like, he has a great documentary called The Kid Stays in the Picture. I hadn't even seen it until like probably, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago or something. And I was already kind of operating with a similar attitude about things. But talk about somebody who just kind of like accidentally stumbled into this ridiculous career where he made all these amazing movies and films. I just, I think he's a good model in that capacity. But the development on my side is feature films, two in particular. One right now, we have a director named John Whitesell, who just recently directed Holiday on Netflix, which it's trended #1 for Netflix for a number of weeks. It may still be there. So we're real excited about that. We're out to try to nail down the lead role for it. We're going through that process. So the whole thing is a process, but as soon as we attach that talent, then God willing, with all the other stuff and all the other challenges like COVID and all that, then we could, push into production with that pretty quickly.
Yeah, and how has that changed what you have working right now, the whole COVID situation?
Yeah, I mean, probably like everybody else, it's definitely put a damper on projects in terms of execution of production. I know, people have come off of production, so the jobs have slimmed out on the tech advising or the risk advising side. So there's challenges there. For me personally, ever since the beginning of COVID, like, I never stopped. So especially with the dog movie that we're working on currently, never stopped. We just kept driving force and forward. And interesting thing, we talked to a lot of people who were pulling off and kind of just, I think, floating and not really figuring out like what they were going to do. They weren't working in an office, and so people kind of stopped developing, and we never did. We just kept presenting offers and kept pushing forward, so that when some of this comes to wrap, hopefully then we can jump right into it instead of letting 6 months go by and then deciding, okay, well, now COVID's gone, now I'm going to jump back into this, because the timeline's still the same. It still takes time to develop these things to get them into production.
Well, if there is an opportunity in your dog movie for a highly untrained golden retriever, I do have one right here. He's at my feet right now snoring. And he is
Yeah,
highly
nice.
untrained. So keep him in mind. That's his best feature. Um, so I think we should open it up to, some questions. I've kind of asked a couple of these as I'm looking through some of the questions. I've kind of already asked a few, like the acting aspect and stuff like that. Actually, Linda had a question that she just posted that said, how do you learn to work through all of the legal issues associated with your business?
Well, I would maybe more specifically, but the ones that I can think of just off the top of my head would maybe be in terms of intellectual property. I mean, you need when you finalize an agreement, you need a lawyer for any of that. So ultimately, with it, whether it's offers to clients or if it's wrapping negotiations for intellectual property, then you can introduce terms, and the terms of agreements and stuff, it comes from experience and also just learning about the industry and what's standard, so industry standard, and then speaking through agents, managers, but ultimately when that deal gets signed, then it's usually through entertainment lawyers. Hopefully that answers her question.
I think you're absolutely right there, and there are entertainment lawyers, and that's what they do. But I would kind of add to what Joel was just talking about, and one of the key things is don't be afraid to make mistakes and don't be afraid to ask questions. I've rarely encountered an expert in this business, and anybody that says they're an expert, I'm a little bit wary of, because we're all just doing our best and trying our best. And the things that worked maybe last year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago have changed. Maybe they don't work the same way now. Maybe they've evolved, to some other, in some other way. And that's the nature of the business. It's always changing. And I don't know that there are any experts out there. So we're all just kind of doing our thing and hoping for the best. And in terms of the legal part of it, I'm pretty much of a dummy in that department myself. And so I ask a lot of dumb questions. And and that's the only way to really kind of the only kind of way to really approach it is to always be in that kind of, have that mindset that you're not afraid to look in essence foolish, because it's not, asking the questions is not foolish. And, and like I said, there are a lot of experts out there that say they are experts and they may not be. And, it's just like what Joel was talking about too, in terms of, when you're peddling your product, you just don't take no for an answer. And, or you accept no from that person and you just move on to somebody else. And, okay, we got another one here. This one's from Randy, and he says, what's a good way to learn how to get started in writing screenplays? A good book or just a good book to learn the basics? What would you say to him?
I think, look, when I first started to learn how to write a screenplay, they didn't have YouTube. The information on the internet was very limited. So you learn to write screenplays by reading other screenplays. There's screenplay programs or software that you can buy. It'll help you do a lot of it that they walk through, but there's really unlimited information on the internet. You can pull up YouTube and just type in how to write a screenplay and probably endless videos would pop up. And so you have YouTube as a source. There's books that you can read about it. But I would also look at some of the probably best grossing films and the Academy Award winning films, and then try to get a hold of those screenplays to see how they were written. and then and learn that way and just jump into it, kind of like immersion language.
Have you ever watched a movie and you were like, loving the movie, but also at the same time you were watching it, you were like, I bet this sucked in writing. You ever feel that way or think that?
I mean, I think in the beginning I can remember, like the movie Goodfellas, I can remember very early on, like watching that movie and everybody loved it. I think it was Academy Award winning, and then I remember flipping through a Goodfellas screenplay and it was just like dry as a bone. And I was thinking, wow, how does this on paper become that on film? And so there's all these different pieces, like what the director brings, the producer, the screenwriter has the vision, and then all these different things come together for the final output. So it's also crucial that people who read the screenplay, that they understand like it's a blueprint for the movie and that they have that vision. Because if you don't have the vision, then yeah, the screenplay is not a novel. It won't read like a novel. For a lot of people, they're kind of boring, but for the people who get it and understand what it could be, then they totally understand it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we have a question from Mike. He says, I have a web series that I'm currently working on. How would you recommend getting it seen by the right person?
Wow. So, I mean, if it's a web series that already exists, this is what's so interesting about it, is that technology gives us the capacity to basically produce our own content. And so the funny thing is that he should just focus on producing good content and then getting the views, because ironically, the more views that he gets, the more that he can basically kind of sell on advertising, which probably would bring him a stream of, a revenue stream that didn't exist before. And if it gets enough views, then truly the people will pretty much probably come knocking to him, or knocking on his door, not, him having to search them down. But if he's just wanting to go out and kind of cold call with his content and just say, hey, this is what I'm producing, I'm looking for it to get picked up by Discovery Channel or National Geographic, he's going to have to find out, the content or the contact information, and really look, I think, to try to get in touch with like maybe their development execs, the creative execs, and get it out to them. But a lot of that also, once again, is going to come down to Hollywood operates on relationships and trust. And so if they're getting random solicitations, usually they're totally against solicitation. So there has to be some level of trust that's built. So it would actually require that individual to cold call and to get on the phone and try to track down somebody. And then to be able to say, hey, listen, I'm an independent producer. I've created this web series. Really would love to get it over to you if you're open to it. They're either going to say yes, or they're going to say, hey, we don't take unsolicited material, push it forward through your agent, which is another catch-22. At that point, you could try again, maybe get somebody else. But the truth is that you're really just going to have to refocus or go to the next place.
Yeah. And then talk a little bit about agents. How did you find yours? How has that benefited you?
Yeah, so even going back to the spec screenplay that I had, I really was what they called hip pocket rep. And I've just, well, so for acting, I did have agents, I did have managers. For screenwriting, I was hip pocket rep by, pretty reputable company. And so they'll either pick you up on the project or they'll pick you up as a writer and then rep you. These COVID days, it's really kind of tricky. And also with the WGA, it's kind of tricky with the agents right now. They appear, at least it looks like people are moving more and more towards the management side. And so I came to the conclusion, for me, it was hard for me to justify. I tried, looking for agents, thinking in your mind, you're thinking, okay, if I could just get the agent, then my material will get sold. And it's just really not the truth. I finally realized that for me, nobody's going to sell my projects better than me. So right. I actually push all my stuff as an independent producer. I don't have an agent. There's people that I could reach out to, but mainly agents, for the most part, they're going to be interested in representing you once you have something that's in demand from the market. And until then, until you have that, or until you've exploded virally or anything like that, then for me, it's kind of wasting your energy to chase that down when you could actually be pouring all of that energy into, pursuing additional content or producing existing content.
Right. We've got one from John. John wants to know if there's any tips from getting a gig as a PA or entry-level position. And I can tell you there are no tricks or tips. It's the same thing, you just got to pound on doors. And he says, as an older veteran, knowing to break into the industry is to get an entry-level job like a PA, and he wants to work up to being a director. John, I would say investigate a DGA trainee. Do a Google search on DGA trainee. A DGA trainee is a training position. It's kind of like winning the lottery if you get that. But the film industry will have a DGA. You can see it in the credits sometimes. They will have a DGA trainee that's a director's trainee on a film, and that's how you learn the directing ins and outs. And then sometimes a DGA trainee will work into being the first or a second director or something like that, and then eventually learn the industry that way. But they may be more inclined to take a veteran as a DGA trainee. It doesn't matter what the age is. I believe there's I think that's a program that somebody has to go through for that. I knew somebody that had applied years ago to be a director, DGA trainee, and she was made it into the top 5. So that's what I would say. And Joel, if you have any other tips, fire away.
I think that's the beauty of the industry, along with any other independent type positions regarding jobs, is that you can kind of take the mapped out path. But the other thing is that if he's comfortable and he wants to start at the PA level, that's his choice. The interesting thing is that if he's very creative, you could jump on YouTube. You can take these kind of weekend film course type things. You get your own camera. You could start filming, film a short, and then submit it into a film festival. And then all of a sudden it could be the biggest thing, and they could think you're the biggest director since, whenever. And so
Right.
If you want to be a director, there's really nothing preventing you from being a director today. There's just a few things that you have to do. Now, it all comes down to market demand. Just because you have the camera, just because you have all the equipment, you can do all the filming. The content has to be desired, and people will have to want to watch it. It has to be something different. And ultimately, you just can't make something and then show up and have an expectation that it's like, hey, I'm here. Your product has to speak for itself, and usually it will. And so I would just say, don't be restricted or feel restricted, at kind of hitting all these different levels when you could immediately go into content creation today, feature film, television, web series, whatever it is.
Right. And that's a good point to kind of piggyback on that point. It's like you said, I mean, anybody can, with a laptop and Final Cut, they can, cut their own movie on their computer. And that's what's happening today. You see that a lot. That doesn't mean it's good, but anybody can be a director, anybody can be a producer, anybody can shoot their own film. But that doesn't mean it's good. So there is that, and there are always things to learn. It's like I was talking about being an expert. That's a myth in terms of that's fallacious thinking from my experience. I've got almost 40 years in the business, and I'm still learning the craft. So I think you always have to have that kind of attitude toward it. Just like anything else, I don't know everything there is to know about it. And the fun of it is that I know that, and and I get to experience that part of it. So, it's always new, in that sense, when it's always new, then it's always fun. And, and when it's fun, then usually the end result is a positive thing or a successful thing. So, there is that part of it. And that goes back to what Joel was talking about in the very, very beginning, in terms of just a mindset, and if you have a positive attitude, if you have I'm not going to be defeated if I get, 100 no's. If you have that attitude going in, then chances are you're going to be successful no matter what it is. But success is measured personally. It has to be your own personal level and measure of success. It can't be what society's measure of success is. If you attach it to society, you're going to get burned, and you're going to be disappointed, because you will find that society's measure is very, very high. And, if you think that your 10-minute short is going to win an Oscar, you're fooling yourself. You're putting that, bar, it's just too high. That's just too high. And it's a learning process. All of this is a learning process. And no matter what it is that you end up doing, as long as you have an open attitude towards embracing it and learning about it and having fun with it, and knowing that you're never going to be an expert at it, your chance of success is good.
People in the military, we think of, you enlist and there's certain rank structure and there's time and grade, and there's sort of a linear approach to life when you think about it from that perspective. And in this business in particular, right, the need to always, stay sharp, to stay motivated, to stay inspired. How do you make sure that, in spite of, an industry where rejection is commonplace, any thoughts about that?
And I have thoughts about that. Absolutely. But you are right. And I can appreciate the military mindset, in terms of what you said, the structure, and that's huge in the military. And I would say that, to some extent that does exist in the entertainment industry, but it's also more or less like you're a pinball in a pinball game. You're bouncing around, and the key is to always try to remain in the game. And I think that's probably key and probably important. Also, it's like you don't necessarily need to be here in order to participate in Hollywood. Based on wherever you are, you can work through whatever network you need to work through, with a phone or the internet or emails or whatever. And I don't know that I don't really love the term breaking into the business. I think you're either there or you're not there. And I think it's a mindset. You have to, it's like, what Joel was talking about in terms of like directing a webcast, it's like, or wanting to become a director. You either are or you're not. And I tell guys, when I have guys that, that are either interns or assistants or whatever, and they say, I want to be a producer, my response to them is, then be one now. It's like the only thing holding us back generally is our attitude. And, and that's not to say that that's absolute, but that is, that's a huge part of it. And, and when I tell people, I'll give you one little instance, one little story. This guy was an assistant and he wanted to be a producer. And he said that to me, and he had helped me with projects. And I said, well, be one now. And he said, well, what do I do? And I said, well, come up with a concept, and start putting it together. Put it together in your mind and put it together on paper. And he's like, and then I said, and then pitch it, pitch it and have it, you can start, with the writing, and then start with the producing aspect of it, and exactly what you want, pick your music and blah, 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 blah. And I said, you got everybody here. You can actually put the thing together. So you can show a finished product. You can actually pitch a finished product. And then he said, well, when would I have time to do that? And I said, on your off hours. And he said, so I won't get paid for it? And I said, yep, can't be a producer. He put a roadblock right in front of him. I won't get paid for it? You're not a producer. No, 99% of the stuff I do takes place when I'm at home, you know, driving, in the shower, whatever, you know, and in this particular environment, in particular, I'm my most creative now because I'm in my element. And, you know, and it's like, and I have already given myself permission. There are no obstacles in my way in that sense. I don't place any of them in front of me. You know, if I come up with something, then I come up with something and I follow it through, whether it's 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. It doesn't matter. And do I get paid for it? No, but that has never mattered. So that has to be a mindset, you know, for anybody. Anything you have passion about, you're already getting paid if you're doing it. So, you know, you can't worry about that stuff. We can't purposely put a minefield in front of us and a roadblock in front of us that prevents us from doing what we're doing. Otherwise, we're not going to do it, or we shouldn't. You know, so it's like with that guy, he didn't turn into a producer. He had put the roadblock.
And Mike, let me just say this. This is, I mean, what you guys are talking about, and I know Joel's going to share his similar thought, but you know, even for me, listen, I'm on a different side of the business, but just, you know, the common element of staying passionate, staying motivated, you know, finding community, you know, the reason why, you know, being around people that are, you know, helping me stay motivated. What you just described is the difference between people who, you know, give up at day one, right? And there's so many analogies back to the military of, you know, you just have to be, you know, it's like they would say, you know, be highly motivated, even if your motivation is false motivation. I don't care. You need to have it, right? So just really great advice.
There are always going to be privates, right? In the military, there's always going to be privates. So, you know, not everyone's going to be a general. You know, and that's the thing too. And you know, it kind of goes back, at least for me, and I think Joel can probably, you know, talk about this as well. But just being really, you know, just kind of in love with what you do and the process of it. And, you know, I think if you stick to that, I think your chances are good. If you look at it as always an opportunity, you know, it's an opportunity to do something different, to learn something new, to experience the creative process. And, you know, and Joel, go ahead and take off on that one too.
I think I agree with, you know, what you said basically, but I think it's interesting to just confirming that my mute button was on. I think it's interesting to think about the etymology of the word producer, and it means to produce. So you have different functions of different producers involved. There, line producer, field producer, executive producers, you know, co-producer. Like there's all these different roles, and really defining, I think, the type of producer you want to become. And then, like you said, is like, okay, if you want to be a producer, then produce. And so one of the fastest ways I think to accomplish that is through content. You know, find something somewhere that somebody else wants. And obviously one of the first motivations is probably gonna have to be something that you think is great. If you don't believe in it, it's gonna be really hard to get behind. That's how I feel, at least. So the first step for me is I have to believe in the project. I have to love the project, because it can take a lot of work to go into it. It could take months, it could take years, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, you know, if someone's going to say, okay, well, is this guy good at his job or not? Then the truth is that the capacity that you're operating in, you need to produce. And so I think that's really where it kind of lands, because you can't just show up and just kind of say like, I'm here, you know, and have an expectation that people are going to roll out the red carpet, you know. But if you have something that somebody else wants, or you find something that somebody else wants, then your chances are greatly increased.
I agree. And then, to kind of add to what Joel said, if you're lacking for that content, pick your story, make it yours. Just write your own story. If you can't start anywhere, start there, and just write your own story. And you may be surprised at how actually good it is. And then, it's like I said in the beginning of this whole thing that, it's like we're all a Hollywood story, every single one of us. And, and find out which is yours and write about that. And then, try not to have an expectation that either prevents you from completing it or prevents you from taking it further. Just don't have any expectation. The doing is the whole part of it, at least for me. And, and that's one of the things that when I look back on my career that I've always had at least that ability to desire the actual doing of it. There were a lot of people when I've passed a lot of people in this business who haven't stayed just because they had no ability to do things, and sometimes it's, their position wouldn't allow them to, once they reached a certain position, it's like, well, I can't do craft services, because I'm this, and I can do craft services. I can pull wires. I can, I can clean up dog poop. I can do any job, and I do. I'm not above any position. My title does not define me. My title is just a part of me. It just doesn't define me. And I'm way more than just my title. So, and I think Joel can attest to that same thing.
Yes, let me just say that going back to my initial thought about Army coffee, because that's what I knew. But this I just want to say thank you to Trident Coffee. I mean, I will tell you this. I feel like I'm going to be awake until I needed to get a good night's rest because I had a long day. I feel like I'm going to be up for like at least 3 days. This is some serious coffee. So yeah. I just want to say thank you, and all that Trident Coffee does. And to thank you I got a beautiful gift, on Friday. A number of cans came in the mail, and I've been enjoying it. So I just want to say thank you for not only a wonderful product, but your commitment to the veteran community and to our nation's military and their families. It's an example of doing well by doing good. So thank you so much.
And to that, also Eric from Trident Coffee. Eric was one of the veterans that I featured in one of my public service messages a couple of years ago. So cheers to you, Eric. And thank you for your service, brother. And I had the Calm Under Pressure cold brew, and I'd like to think that I can just maybe that's going to be a moniker for me, Calm Under Pressure. And so thank you for that. And Eric, I think we turn it over to you for a couple of words.
Well, Mike, thanks so much for the invite. I mean, it's an honor to be on here, to be able to kind of keep them associated with the side of the veteran community, because it is relatively still small going back. So we absolutely love storytelling. We love symbology. That's what we kind of do here. So we tie in a lot of the historical knowledge and kind of the pieces that we want to be something part of bigger something than ourselves, which is I think what most of us loved about the military, is that we felt this camaraderie, felt this passion that was more than just us. So through these symbols, through these storytellings, getting copy from all over the world, we can really kind of create a nice base for people to connect over coffee. Because that's the one thing I found when I'm overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan, sitting with village elders or whoever the case may be, having coffee or chai tea. A blonde hair, blue eyed guy from San Diego had nothing in common right off the bat, but you sit down with them and realize what they're doing. And, I sat down with an Iraqi general and he was just like, yeah, I do this to keep my family safe. I'm like, that's no more different than anybody else I know that we're doing. So it's one of those things that we can sit down and actually have coffee together. We can break down a lot of the barriers and kind of build more bridges. So we use coffee as a means and storytelling as a means to connect people. And so we're very grateful to be partnering with you guys here today. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Eric. Awesome.
Well, thank you, Eric, for sponsoring the coffee here for us for Coffee with Vets. We're enjoying it. And I just wanted to introduce Karen Kraft. Are you here, Karen?
I am. I'm here, right here. Thank you. How are you?
Good. How are you? How are you enjoying
Great.
the session?
Yeah, great webinar, great class. Joel, thank you for sharing all your stories with your fellow veterans and with us. It's pretty awesome. Richard, thank you, and Mike for putting this together. Eric, for all my fellow VMEers out there, I am drinking some Trident coffee. And Brenda Garcia, I'm going to make your day. This Army girl is actually recommending something that's got a Navy symbol on it. So you know that it must be good for me to cross that line. But Eric, thank you so much for sponsoring it. Betty, and to you, Melanie, and your team, and Tiffany Pilgrim, who's a veteran volunteer for VME as well. Thanks for putting this together. It's really great to see veterans giving back. I see so many alumni groups from different schools that produce people in media and entertainment or law or marketing or MBAs, and they look out for each other. And vets get in the business and they kind of sometimes forget to look out for us. And the first thing you learn in the military is, you know, when you're in charge, you got to look out for the person underneath you the second you get promoted. And so VME is about just connection and friends and helping each other out through this, especially these difficult times. And we certainly rely on partners like you at CBS and Viacom to take and do everything you can to help out your fellow veterans or the veterans in your community. So you lead well and you represent well and you make us proud. So thanks for hosting us and bringing us all together right after this holiday and during Veterans Month.
You know, we have a great team, and the common theme is, you know, as we say, you know, what can we do to help? And I just want to say to everyone who's joined us today, you know, thank you for all that you do. Stay strong, you know, don't give up hope. Stay focused, stay around, you know, groups like this. Listen, we support each other. We lift each other up. We inspire each other, and then it happens, and it will. You know, there's a better day tomorrow, and you know, we will continue to have these events, and it's mutually beneficial. It's not just that we're providing, you know, something of inspiration to you, but you inspire us, you know, and our commitment as a company through our you know, our workforce, you know, increasing the representation of veterans within our workforce through our vendor and supplier diversity, the stories that we tell. I think, you know, that Melanie and Tiffany mentioning that tonight we have season 4 premiere of SEAL Team, and these are just one of many themed programs. Melanie works on the Blue Bloods series. And we were just talking about, you know, that even though that's about New York City police officers and a family, the backstory is about military service. So, you know, we try to do this in a way that honors, you know, service and tells authentic stories. And so, you know, we'll continue to do that. We'll also continue to stay close to you. And as we wrap up Veterans Month, let me just say from the bottom of my heart how much we appreciate all that you do, all that you've done for our nation, and what you do to inspire us. And you can count on us to walk shoulder to shoulder with you to complete your mission as we try to make the world a better place. I think veterans are in a very unique position to remind people of the things that we share in common. So much of today is focused on the things that are, you know, the differences. But at the end of the day, the perspective we bring is we know about the ties that bind. We know about the common purpose. We know about shared values. And we know that life is short. And, you know, Betty and I always say it, you know, there needs to be more love in the world, less hate. And I think we're in a position as veterans with a perspective on life and death and adversity to be leaders in that regard. So, and that goes for everyone of my friends who are part of this Veterans Network. You know, we're here to support your mission. So thank you. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
Rich, this is Joel. I just wanted to tell everyone thank you.